My name is Evelyn Radcliffe, and at 28 years old, I never expected my father's funeral would become the most satisfying moment of revenge I'd ever experience. Standing in the mahogany-paneled law office beside my perfectly polished sister Victoria, surrounded by relatives who had spent decades treating me like the family disappointment, should have been simply a time for grief and closure. But years of unfair treatment, dismissive comments, and being treated as the lesser daughter had built up to this moment. I still hear their cold words echoing in my mind. Evelyn will never amount to anything. She's not smart like Victoria. She's just not cut out for success. The memory of that Thanksgiving dinner 3 years ago when my uncle literally laughed in my face after I mentioned starting my own business still burns. Before I reveal what made their faces turn ghostly pale when the lawyer read my father's will out loud, let me tell you exactly how I went from being the family scapegoat to proving every single one of them wrong. If you've ever had to fight twice as hard for half the recognition, if you've ever been underestimated by the people who should have believed in you most, then you'll understand why this moment was so sweet. Drop a comment if you've experienced similar treatment from family members who couldn't see your potential. I grew up in what appeared to be a picture-perfect family in Westchester County, New York. Our colonial-style home, with its manicured lawn and Mercedes in the driveway, projected success and stability. My father, Charles Radcliffe, was a prominent investment banker, while my mother, Margaret, managed the household with the precision of a military operation. We weren't just comfortable. We were wealthy, connected, and everything looked flawless from the outside. My sister Victoria was 2 years older than me, and from the moment I could understand family dynamics, it was clear she was the golden child. With her platinum blonde hair that never had a strand out of place, her effortless ability to charm every adult in the room, and her natural academic brilliance, she embodied everything our parents valued. Victoria graduated valedictorian from our elite prep school, earned a full scholarship to Harvard, and by age 25 was already a rising star at a top-tier consulting firm. I, on the other hand, was the daughter who required explanation. While Victoria excelled in mathematics and debate, I gravitated toward art and creative writing. While she brought home straight A's without breaking a sweat, I struggled with dyslexia that went undiagnosed until I was 16. While she confidently commanded attention at dinner parties, I preferred quiet conversations with our housekeeper Maria, who taught me Spanish and shared stories about her homeland in Guatemala. The differential treatment wasn't subtle. During family gatherings, relatives would gush over Victoria's latest achievement while barely acknowledging my presence. Victoria got promoted again. My mother would announce proudly, "She's the youngest manager in her department's history." When I won a regional art competition in high school, the news was met with polite nods and a quick subject change. My father's study was a shrine to Victoria's accomplishments. Her Harvard diploma hung prominently behind his desk, flanked by photos of her receiving various awards. My own achievements, a scholarship to a respected art school, several published illustrations, a growing freelance business, were relegated to a small corner shelf, almost hidden behind his law books. The message was clear. Victoria was the investment. I was the consolation prize. The moment that changed everything happened on a cold February evening during my senior year of college. I had driven 3 hours home to celebrate Victoria's engagement to Preston Matthews, heir to a pharmaceutical fortune. The house buzzed with relatives, family friends, and business associates, all toasting the perfect match between two exceptional families. I had just finished my final semester at the Rhode Island School of Design, where I'd maintained a 3.8 GPA while working two part-time jobs to help cover expenses that my parents deemed character building for me, though Victoria's entire education had been funded without question. I was excited to share that I'd landed my first major client, a boutique hotel chain that wanted me to design their entire visual identity. As I approached the group gathered around Victoria's engagement ring, I heard my father's voice clearly. "We're so proud of Victoria. She's always been the responsible one, the one with real ambition. She's marrying into a good family, and she'll never have to worry about supporting herself." My Aunt Patricia, wine glass in hand, laughed heartily. "Thank goodness you have one daughter who can be counted on. What about Evelyn? Still playing with her little art projects?" My father's response cut through me like a blade. "Evelyn is. Well, she's trying. But let's be realistic, she's not built for real success. She's too emotional, too scattered. We're hoping she'll find a nice husband who can take care of her because she's certainly not going to be able to take care of herself." The room erupted in knowing chuckles. My mother added, "She's sweet, but she just doesn't have Victoria's drive or intelligence. Some people are meant to be leaders, and others are meant to be followers." I stood frozen in the doorway, clutching the portfolio I'd brought to show them my latest work. In that moment, something shifted inside me. The years of being dismissed, overlooked, and underestimated crystallized into a burning determination. I wouldn't just prove them wrong, I would exceed their wildest expectations. I left that night without saying goodbye, driving back to school with tears streaming down my face and a fire burning in my chest. For the first time in my life, I stopped seeking their approval and started building something entirely my own. My senior thesis project became an obsession. I designed a comprehensive rebranding campaign for a struggling local nonprofit that helped immigrant families find employment. The project wasn't just about visual design. I researched their target demographic, analyzed their competition, and created a complete marketing strategy that resulted in a 300% increase in donations within 6 months. My professor, Dr. Sarah Chin, was the first person to truly see my potential. "Evelyn," she said after reviewing my thesis, "you have something rare. You don't just create beautiful designs, you create solutions. You understand people, and you know how to connect with them emotionally." Dr. Chin introduced me to Marcus Rodriguez, a successful entrepreneur who had built a digital marketing agency from nothing. Marcus became my first real mentor, someone who saw past my family's low expectations and recognized my actual capabilities. "Your family doesn't understand what they have," Marcus told me during one of our coffee meetings. "They're measuring you by their standards, but you're playing a completely different game. They see traditional success, titles, corporate ladders, conventional paths. You see opportunities they can't even imagine." After graduation, instead of moving back home or seeking a traditional job, I moved to Austin, Texas, with $3,000 in savings and a laptop. I rented a tiny studio apartment and began building my brand consulting business from scratch. The first year was brutal. I lived on ramen noodles and worked 18-hour days. I took on any project I could find, designing logos for food trucks, creating marketing materials for local businesses, even doing children's birthday party invitations. My family's calls became less frequent, and when they did check in, the conversation was always tinged with pity. "How's the art thing going?" my mother would ask, her tone suggesting she was already planning my inevitable return home. "Still struggling to make ends meet?" Victoria would add during family calls, her voice dripping with false concern. But I wasn't struggling, I was building. By my second year in Austin, My client roster had grown to include 3 restaurants, a boutique fitness studio, and a local tech startup. I wasn't just designing anymore. I was providing complete brand strategy, helping businesses understand their identity and communicate it effectively to their customers. The tech startup, CloudVault, became my breakthrough client. They were 3 brilliant programmers who had created innovative data storage software but had no idea how to market it. I spent months learning their technology, understanding their market, and developing a brand identity that translated complex technical concepts into compelling, accessible messaging. When CloudVault was acquired by a major corporation for $50 million, the CEO, David Park, credited my branding work as instrumental in their success. Evelyn didn't just make us look professional, he told a local business magazine. She helped us understand who we were and how to tell our story. That quote appeared in a feature article about Austin's emerging creative economy. The piece included a photo of me in my small office, surrounded by my work, with the headline, "Local Designer Helps Tech Startup Hit the Jackpot." I sent the article to my parents, hoping for some recognition. My father's response was a brief email, "Nice to see you're keeping busy." Victoria just got promoted to senior director. But I wasn't working for their approval anymore. I was building something bigger. The CloudVault success opened doors I'd never imagined. Within 6 months, I had inquiries from companies across the country. I hired my first employee, then my second, then my third. By the end of my 4th year in business, Radcliffe Brand Solutions had 12 employees and a client list that included Fortune 500 companies. My approach was different from traditional agencies. I didn't just create pretty designs, I embedded myself in my clients' businesses, understanding their challenges, their customers, and their goals. I created brand experiences that drove measurable results. When I helped a struggling restaurant chain increase their revenue by 40% through a complete rebrand and marketing overhaul, industry publications took notice. When I guided a nonprofit through a campaign that tripled their volunteer base, I was invited to speak at conferences. The recognition snowballed. I won the Austin Business Journal's 40 Under 40 award. I was featured in Entrepreneur Magazine's Women to Watch series. I spoke at South by Southwest about the intersection of design and business strategy. Through it all, my family remained notably absent from my achievements. When I called to share that I'd been invited to speak at a major conference, my mother's response was, "That's nice, dear. Did you hear that Victoria is being considered for partner at her firm?" The distance between us grew, but so did my confidence. I wasn't the scattered, emotional failure they'd labeled me. I was building something substantial, something that mattered. 5 years after leaving home, I made a decision that would change everything. Instead of continuing to grow my agency, I decided to create something entirely new, a digital platform that would democratize brand consulting for small businesses. BrandBridge was born from my frustration with watching talented entrepreneurs struggle to compete with larger companies simply because they couldn't afford professional branding. I envisioned a platform that would provide AI-powered brand analysis, customizable design templates, and strategic guidance at a fraction of traditional consulting costs. I spent my own money developing the prototype, working with a team of developers and designers who believed in the vision. We launched with a simple goal: help 10,000 small businesses in our first year. We exceeded that goal in 6 months. BrandBridge exploded. Small business owners across the country embraced the platform, sharing success stories about how our tools had helped them attract customers, increase sales, and compete with larger competitors. The platform's success attracted attention from major investors. When TechCrunch featured BrandBridge in their Startups to Watch series, describing it as the Canva of brand strategy, everything changed. Venture capital firms began reaching out. The platform's valuation soared. 6 months later, I accepted an acquisition offer from a major technology company for $75 million. At 27 years old, I had become wealthier than anyone in my family had ever imagined possible. The acquisition made national news. Forbes ran a profile titled, "From Art School to 8 Figures: How Evelyn Radcliffe Disrupted Brand Consulting." The article detailed my journey from being underestimated by my own family to building a platform that had helped thousands of small businesses succeed. The recognition was overwhelming and vindicating. I was invited to speak at major conferences, join prestigious business organizations, and serve on nonprofit boards. I purchased a beautiful home in Austin's Hills, complete with a studio where I could return to my artistic roots. But the sweetest moment came when I received a call from my alma mater. The Rhode Island School of Design wanted to award me their Distinguished Alumni Award, recognizing my contributions to both design and entrepreneurship. "Evelyn," the dean said during our conversation, "you've redefined what it means to be a designer in the business world. You've shown that creativity and strategy aren't separate disciplines, they're complementary forces that can drive real change." I thought about Dr. Chin, who had first seen my potential, and Marcus, who had helped me believe in myself. I thought about all the small business owners who had trusted me with their dreams. I thought about the team members who had worked tirelessly to build something meaningful. And yes, I thought about my family, who had spent decades underestimating someone who was capable of far more than they'd ever imagined. My father's health began declining rapidly during my 7th year in Austin. When he was diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer, I flew home immediately, despite our complicated relationship. I spent weeks at his bedside, hoping for some acknowledgement, some recognition of what I'd achieved. He was proud of Victoria's recent promotion to managing director and spoke often about her impressive salary and corner office. He mentioned my success only once, saying, "I heard you sold your company. I hope you invested the money wisely." When he passed away peacefully on a Tuesday morning in March, I felt grief, but also an unexpected sense of closure. I had stopped needing his approval years ago, but some part of me had still hoped for it. The day of his funeral was unseasonably warm for early spring. Our family home filled with relatives, business associates, and family friends, many of whom I hadn't seen since Victoria's engagement party years earlier. The conversations were polite but distant, filled with the same dismissive undertones I remembered from childhood. "Evelyn, you look well," my Uncle Patricia said, her voice carrying the same condescending tone from years past. "Are you still doing that art business?" "I heard you moved to Texas," added my cousin Richard. "Are you planning to move back now that your father's gone? Maybe find something more stable." Victoria, elegant in her black designer suit, commanded the room with stories about her latest business triumph. She had indeed made partner at her consulting firm and was earning what she described as an embarrassing amount of money. The relatives hung on her every word, just as they always had. I sat quietly in the corner, observing the dynamics that had shaped my childhood. Nothing had changed. I was still the daughter who required explanation, the one whose achievements were minimized or ignored entirely. After the funeral service, we gathered at the law office of Harrison, Blackwood and Associates for the reading of my father's will. The mahogany-paneled conference room was filled with family members, all expecting a straightforward distribution of assets. My father had been successful in his investment banking career, accumulating substantial wealth over the decades. The family home alone was worth over $2 million, and his investment portfolio was rumored to be worth several million more. Mr. Harrison, my father's longtime attorney, opened the proceedings with formal language about my father's final wishes. The room was quiet except for the rustling of papers and the occasional cough. To my daughter Victoria, Mr. Harrison read, who has always been the responsible one, I leave my investment portfolio, currently valued at approximately $3.2 million, and the family home in Westchester County. Victoria's face lit up with a satisfied smile. The relatives nodded approvingly, murmuring about how appropriate the decision was. To my daughter Evelyn, Mr. Harrison continued, and I braced myself for whatever small token my father had left me. I leave my personal effects, family photographs, and my collection of first edition books. The room was silent except for a few poorly concealed snickers. My Aunt Patricia actually rolled her eyes. Victoria reached over and patted my hand in what I'm sure she thought was a comforting gesture. But Mr. Harrison wasn't finished. However, he continued, his voice growing stronger. I also leave to Evelyn the contents of my private safe deposit box at Manhattan Trust, which contains documents and assets that she, and only she, is authorized to access. A murmur went through the room. This was unexpected. Additionally, Mr. Harrison read, I leave to Evelyn a sealed letter that I've instructed to be read aloud to all present parties. He reached for a thick envelope, broke the seal, and began to read my father's words. To my family gathered here today, I need to address something that has weighed on my heart for many years. I failed Evelyn. I failed to recognize her extraordinary potential, failed to support her unique talents, and failed to appreciate the remarkable young woman she became despite my shortcomings as a father. While I was fixated on traditional measures of success, Evelyn was building something I could never have imagined. She took risks I was too afraid to take, showed creativity I could never understand, and demonstrated resilience I could never match. I recently learned the full extent of Evelyn's achievements. She built a company from nothing and sold it for more money than I earned in my entire career. She has helped thousands of small businesses succeed, created jobs for dozens of people, and been recognized as one of the most innovative entrepreneurs of her generation. Victoria, you have made me proud in ways I've always expressed. But Evelyn, you have made me proud in ways I was too blind to see until it was almost too late. The safe deposit box contains my research into Evelyn's company and achievements, along with a check for $500,000, my apology for the support I should have given you years ago, and my investment in whatever you choose to build next. The room was dead silent. Every face had turned toward me, expressions ranging from shock to confusion to something that looked like embarrassment. But my father's letter wasn't finished. I also want everyone here to know that Evelyn is now worth more than our entire family combined. She achieved this not because of her inheritance, not because of family connections, but because she had the courage to believe in herself when no one else would. Evelyn, I hope you can forgive a foolish old man who spent too many years measuring the wrong things. You are extraordinary, and I'm sorry it took me so long to see it. The silence in the room was deafening. I watched as the reality of my father's words sank in. The relatives who had spent decades dismissing me, the family members who had treated me as the disappointing daughter, the people who had laughed at my little art projects, they all sat in stunned silence. Victoria's face had gone pale. Is this accurate?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Mr. Harrison nodded. I helped your father research Evelyn's business dealings. The sale of Brandbridge is public record. The platform she created has been valued at over $100 million by its current owners. My Aunt Patricia, who had made that cruel comment about my art thing at the funeral, looked like she'd seen a ghost. My uncle, who had laughed at my business plans, was staring at me with a mixture of awe and embarrassment. "You mean," my cousin Richard said slowly, when we were talking about her needing something more stable. "She was already worth more than anyone in this room," Mr. Harrison confirmed. I stood up slowly, feeling the weight of decades of dismissal and underestimation lifting from my shoulders. "I need some air," I said quietly and walked out of the conference room. But I could hear the eruption of voices behind me, the shocked exclamations, the frantic questions. For the first time in my life, I was the daughter who didn't require explanation. I was the daughter who had exceeded everyone's wildest expectations. The days following the will reading were surreal. My phone buzzed constantly with messages from relatives who had barely acknowledged my existence for years. Suddenly, everyone wanted to reconnect, to hear about my business, to understand how I had achieved such success. Victoria called me 3 days later. "Evelyn," she said, her voice different than I'd ever heard it, "I owe you an apology." "We all do." "You don't owe me anything," I replied, and I meant it. "I stopped needing your approval a long time ago." "But I want to understand," she pressed. "How did you do it? How did you build something so significant without any of us knowing?" I thought about her question for a long moment. "I did it because I had to. When you're not handed opportunities, you create them. When you're not given support, you find your own way. When you're not believed in, you learn to believe in yourself." The safe deposit box contained exactly what my father had promised, documentation of my achievements that he had apparently been following for years, along with newspaper clippings, magazine articles, and printed copies of online features about Brandbridge. There was also a handwritten note that simply said, "I was wrong about you. I'm sorry." The $500,000 check was generous, but it wasn't the money that mattered. It was the recognition, the acknowledgement that I had been capable of extraordinary things all along. 6 months after my father's death, I made another life-changing decision. I used his $500,000 gift, combined with my own resources, to start the Radcliffe Foundation, a nonprofit organization dedicated to supporting young entrepreneurs from underestimated backgrounds. The foundation provides mentorship, funding, and resources to people who have big dreams but lack the family support or traditional networks to achieve them. We focus particularly on first-generation college students, immigrants, and anyone who has been told they're not cut out for success. Dr. Chin agreed to serve on our board of directors. Marcus Rodriguez became our head of mentorship programming. We partnered with business schools, community organizations, and startup accelerators to identify and support promising entrepreneurs who might otherwise be overlooked. In our first year, we supported 43 entrepreneurs. 18 of them launched successful businesses. 5 of them achieved 6-figure revenues within 12 months. 2 of them have been featured in national publications. Every success story reminds me of my own journey, the power of believing in yourself when others don't, the importance of finding mentors who see your potential, and the satisfaction of proving wrong those who underestimated you. Looking back now, I realize that my family's dismissal was actually a gift, though it didn't feel like one at the time. Because I couldn't rely on their support or approval, I had to develop my own strength. Because I couldn't follow their prescribed path, I had to create my own. The little girl who sat in the corner during family gatherings, who watched her sister receive all the attention and praise, who was told she wasn't smart enough or driven enough, that little girl learned to see opportunities where others saw obstacles. The young woman who left home with $3,000 and a dream learned that success isn't about meeting other people's expectations. It's about exceeding your own. The entrepreneur who built a platform that helped thousands of small businesses learned that the most meaningful achievements are the ones that lift others up. I still think about that night when I overheard my father dismiss my potential, when my family laughed at my ambitions. But now I think about it with gratitude. That moment of pain became the catalyst for everything that followed. Today, I live in a beautiful home in Austin, surrounded by art and books and the tools of creativity. I run a foundation that changes lives, work with entrepreneurs who are building the future, and create when the spirit moves me. My relationship with my family has evolved. Victoria and I have developed a genuine friendship, built on mutual respect rather than competition. She's successful in her own right, and I'm successful in mine. The difference is that now our parents' approval isn't the measure of our worth. Some of my relatives still don't quite know how to relate to me. The family dynamics that were established in childhood die hard. But their confusion or discomfort no longer affects me. I know who I am, what I've accomplished, and what I'm capable of achieving. The most rewarding part of my journey isn't the money or the recognition. It's the knowledge that I've helped others avoid the pain of being underestimated. Every young entrepreneur I mentor, every small business owner who succeeds using the tools I've created, every person who refuses to accept limitations placed on them by others, they're all part of a legacy that matters more than any inheritance. If you're someone who has been underestimated, dismissed, or told you're not capable of extraordinary things, I want you to know this. They're wrong. Not everyone will see your potential, understand your vision, or believe in your dreams. That's okay. You don't need their permission to succeed. Find your own mentors. Create your own opportunities. Build your own definition of success. And when you achieve it, you will remember to reach back and help others who are where you once were. The greatest revenge isn't proving them wrong, though that certainly feels good. The greatest revenge is living so well, achieving so much, and helping so many others that their opinion of you becomes completely irrelevant. My father's will reading was vindicating, but it wasn't the moment that defined my success. That moment happened years earlier, when I decided to stop waiting for approval and start building something meaningful. The laughter stopped long before the will was read. It stopped the moment I chose to believe in myself more than I believed in their limitations. And that's a lesson worth more than any inheritance. If this story resonated with you, if you've ever felt underestimated or overlooked, share your experience in the comments below. Let's create a community of people who refuse to accept other people's limitations and build something extraordinary instead. Your story matters, and someone needs to hear it.